let's get to it. Today we're going to talk about the Black Art Summary. So this entire week I had covered 6 different topics that I thought would bring a great storyline to this concept of Black art. I started off with Black anthropologists. I talked about Nora Zio Hurston, and she's basically like a Black History Month celebrity. So a lot of Black Americans already know who she is and her contribution to Black America. She collected a lot of Afro-American art in the form of music, folklore, Afro-ancestral spirituality, language, dance, and the list is basically limitless. Then I followed up with Black Cuban music, and I picked 2 Afro-Cuban artists that I thought paved the way for Afro-Cuban musical art. So these Afro-Cuban artists are Celia Cruz and a group with various Afro-Cuban all-stars known as the Buena Vista Social Club. I talked about both of them, and I also didn't touch on this, but it's something that is relevant in this concept of Black Cuban music. So some Afro-Cuban artists, they practiced an underground form of Santeria with sounds like the cajones de rumba. So basically, I'm saying that Santeria is the African spirituality concept that was in Cuba. So you had some artists that were involved in these underground spiritual organizations, and that was something to bring to the table because this topic of Black Cuban music has to also incorporate our spirituality, or the Cuban form of African ancestral spirituality. Next, I talked about the Black Motherland music and Afrobeats. Afrobeats basically got global recognition through Fela Kuti, and Fela Kuti was another one who believed in the vibrations of ancient African spirituality. And if you listen to some of his music, you can hear how those different messages that he sends, so that's voice vibrations, the different messages he sends through his instrumentation, through his voice, the way that he just carries himself as a whole, you can see that this man is embedded into his African heritage. So he's basically like the father of Afrobeats, and his sons are artists that we know today as Burna Boy, Wizkid, and P Square. P Square was before Burna Boy and Wizkid, so that's like a oldie but goodie when it comes to Afrobeats, or just the Nigerian music scene as well. So then we also included Congolese rumba into this Black Motherland music, because if we're going to talk about music, we have to talk about Kingdom Congo. So basically, I had discussed how rumba had came to part, and it was through some form of colonial resistance. Who knew? And I talked about Fally Ipupa, Robinho, Kofi, and Ferragola, but I didn't talk about Fabregas, which is a current rumba singer, and he's very successful, and he has some songs that's talking about his wife, and her name is Terry, so I personally like that. And yeah, he's a great artist as well. So if you're gonna look at Congolese rumba, definitely look at Fabregas. Then next I went to the Black art activists, and this is still in Kingdom Congo, meaning heritage. So Mwazulu Diabanza is a Congolese man who currently doesn't live in Congo because of the purposeful instability, political instability of Congo. So he can be just deduced as a revolutionary, and he's focused on rehoming stolen ancient artifacts that are monetized and showcased in European and American museums. So basically, this man fights for artifacts that were stolen from all peoples around the world, all indigenous people from around the world, by European colonialists. So he wants all of us to get our heritage back. He wants all of us to have our ancient artifacts so we can understand where we are from, and that will entail where we are going, meaning the future. And next, we had talked about Black Dreams. So Black Dreams is basically talking about the Aboriginal Australian lifestyle. Usually when we think of Black people, we think of, the transatlantic dehumanization experiment, and we think of Africa. We usually don't think of the continent of Australia, when the continent of Australia had the same copy-paste domination system like everywhere else. During the colonial era, when the British had first went to Australia, those people they viewed us as not human. So they would take our babies and they would smash them on rocks. They would kill, rape without any remorse. And that was the type of behavior they had all over the world. So I think it's important to highlight how Australia needs to be incorporated into this idea of blackness, because those are black people as well. And they've gone through the same thing that all of us black people have gone through and still go through. Because if you look at the prison population in Australia, you will see that majority of it is black. So when we talk about the prison system, the prison industrial system, that's a copy-paste system. That is a colonial product. So anywhere where there was colonization and is occupation to this day, which is a form of colonization, you will find this prison industrial complex that disproportionately puts black people in jail. So I wanted to bring up Aboriginal Australians' creation stories, how they were able to survive for thousands of years. These people preserved their creation stories through oral tradition and also visualizations. They carved their creation stories on rocks. They carved different concepts on rocks so that each generation will be able to recycle the oral tradition and also recycle the visualizations. And one thing that I love about Indigenous people is that we are so intertwined with our landscape. We're so intertwined with nature. And that was something that came very normal to us because we had a culture and a heritage that respected nature. We knew the value of plants. We knew the value of animals. We knew the sacred role of biology. So I love how these Aboriginal people only are able to pass down their language orally, and they tell you how the landscape is incorporated into their heritage, who they are as Aboriginal people of Australia. So I definitely had to talk about them. The last topic for this week was Black global spirituality. This is something that is so important to me because Black global spirituality is basically Afro descendants holding on to their ancestral heritage through spirituality. If you think about it, concepts of voodoo, santeria, hoodoo, all that has to do with African ancient spirituality. So these religions that we were taught later, it was another form of erasing that spirituality that we naturally brought with us during the transatlantic dehumanization experiment. These practices are basically like the crumbs of our ancestry, but majority of Afro descendants worship the colonizers' spirituality, which is very interesting. And of course, we're going to do that because of the domination, subjugation, and the inferiority complex that has been forcefully embedded into us. But what I find funny is the trick bag. The trick bag is they raped us, killed, lied, and stole with the good ship Jesus. And we bow down to that same Jesus that allowed demons to dominate us. The same Bible that they brung to our lands while they conned us out of our heritage. We use it to gain spiritual healing. A great question is, how often is the spirituality of demons questioned amongst global Afro descendants? Do we ever question these religions that have been forced upon us? Because without a question, we demonize African spirituality. We see it as black magic. We see it as evil, a scam, all these negative things. But somehow we're going to believe that woman came from a man's rib. The last time I checked, we have been the only ones practicing what the devil preaches. Yet they have our land's heritage, birthrights, and all we have is hope.